The rusted shopping cart screeched against the asphalt as Amara collapsed to her knees, her pregnant belly pressing against the hot Texas pavement. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead where she'd been struck. The aluminum cans she'd spent all morning collecting scattered across the road like broken dreams. Her vision blurred as she looked up at the gleaming black Mercedes that had pulled over, its door opening to reveal polished leather shoes stepping onto the dusty shoulder of Highway 87. "Please," she whispered, one hand instinctively protecting her swollen stomach, the other reaching toward her two children who stood frozen in terror beside the overturned cart. "Please don't hurt my babies." The man emerging from the luxury vehicle moved closer, his shadow falling across her trembling form. This was the moment everything would change. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. Let's go back to where it all began, 3 months earlier. Amara Washington had once believed in the American dream. She believed in love too, until her husband Marcus walked out on a cold February morning, leaving nothing but unpaid bills and 3 hungry mouths to feed. Their apartment in South Dallas had become a prison of past due notices and disconnection warnings. 8-year-old Jasmine and 6-year-old DeAndre didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. They didn't understand why their mother cried silently in the bathroom after tucking them into bed each night. They didn't know that she was 3 months pregnant with their baby sister, or that the morning sickness that plagued her made every day feel like climbing a mountain with stones tied to her feet. Amara had tried everything. She'd applied to dozens of jobs, but her pregnancy made employers nervous. Fast food restaurants wanted workers who could stand for 8-hour shifts. Retail stores needed people who could lift heavy boxes. Nobody wanted a woman who would need maternity leave in 6 months. The eviction notice came on a Monday. 30 days to vacate. Amara stared at the paper until the words blurred together, her hand resting on her growing belly. That night, as she watched Jasmine and DeAndre share a can of soup for dinner, she made a decision. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. The next morning, she found an abandoned shopping cart behind the Piggly Wiggly supermarket. She'd seen other people collecting cans and bottles for the recycling redemption money. 5 cents per can didn't sound like much, but if she could collect 200 cans a day, that was $10. $70 a week. Maybe enough to buy groceries and keep the lights on for 1 more month while she figured something out. "Mama, where are we going?" Jasmine asked as they walked along the service road, the July sun already beating down at 9 in the morning. "We're going on a treasure hunt, baby," Amara said, forcing brightness into her voice. "We're going to find special cans that we can trade for money." DeAndre's eyes lit up. "Like pirates." "Exactly like pirates," she said, her heart breaking. The first day, they collected 47 cans. Amara's feet ached, and the baby pressed heavily against her bladder. She'd had to stop 3 times to rest, sitting on bus stop benches while her children played with sticks they'd found. That night, they had $2.35. Enough for a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. But she didn't give up. Every morning, they set out with their cart. Amara learned the routes, discovered which gas stations had the most discarded cans, which parks were picked clean by other collectors, which stretches of highway yielded the best finds. She learned to ignore the stares of people in passing cars, the pity in some eyes, the disgust in others. Jasmine and DeAndre became experts too. They could spot aluminum can glinting in the grass from 50 feet away. They competed to see who could collect the most, turning their poverty into a game because their mother had taught them that survival sometimes required pretending. The other collectors were mostly kind. Old Mr. Chen shared his water bottle with them on hot days. A woman named Rosa showed Amara the best times to check behind the sports complex after games. But there were others who saw a pregnant woman with 2 children as competition, who would deliberately empty their trash finds on the ground just to slow her down, who cursed at her in parking lots. 3 months passed this way. Amara's belly grew larger. Her back ached constantly. She'd given up the apartment and moved them into her 2003 Honda Civic. They slept in Walmart parking lots, washed up in gas station bathrooms, and pretended they were on a great camping adventure. Jasmine had stopped asking when they could go home. The morning it happened started like any other. They worked their way along Highway 87, the cart 3/4 full. It was a good day. Maybe enough for a hot meal at McDonald's, not just peanut butter sandwiches. DeAndre was singing a song he'd learned at the library during their afternoon cooling-off sessions. Jasmine was telling her mother about a book she wanted to read. Amara didn't see the broken bottle hidden in the tall grass. She stepped wrong, her ankle twisting, and fell forward. The cart tipped, cans exploding across the road. She tried to catch herself, but her pregnant body was off balance. Her head struck the edge of the cart, and pain exploded behind her eyes. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard her children screaming. Then the sound of tires on gravel. A car door opening. Footsteps approaching. And that's when she looked up and saw him. The man from the Mercedes. The man who would change everything. But in that moment, bleeding and afraid, Amara Washington had no idea whether he would be her salvation or her final destruction. The man's face came into focus slowly. He was African American, probably in his late 50s, with silver threading through his close-cropped hair. His suit probably cost more than Amara had earned in the past year. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They weren't filled with pity or disgust. They held something else entirely. Recognition. As if he was seeing not just a desperate woman on the side of the road, but a memory of someone he once knew. "Don't move," he said, his voice deep and steady. "You're bleeding. Kids, is this your mama?" Jasmine nodded, tears streaming down her face. DeAndre had wrapped his small arms around his sister, both of them terrified of this stranger in the expensive clothes. The man pulled out his phone, and Amara's heart seized with panic. "No, please," she gasped. "Don't call the police. Don't call CPS. They'll take my babies. Please, I'm begging you." He paused, his finger hovering over the screen. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he knelt down, not seeming to care that the dusty road would ruin his suit pants. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Amara. Amara Washington." "Amara, I'm not calling the police. I'm calling my driver to bring the other car. You need medical attention, and your children need to get out of this heat. Will you let me help you?" She wanted to say no. She wanted to grab her children and run. But the truth was, she couldn't run anymore. She was exhausted. The cut on her head throbbed with each heartbeat. And this man, despite his wealth and polish, had kind eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help us?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment, something like pain flashed across his face. "Because a long time ago, someone should have stopped to help my sister. And nobody did." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in an air-conditioned black SUV. The man, who'd introduced himself as Malcolm Rivers, sat up front with his driver while Amara and the children occupied the leather back seats. A first aid kit lay open between them, and Malcolm's driver, a kind-faced woman named Patricia, had cleaned and bandaged the cut on Amara's forehead. "It's not too deep," Patricia said gently. "But you should still see a doctor. And honey, when's the last time you had a prenatal checkup?" Amara looked down at her hands. 3 months ago. Before my insurance ran out." She felt Malcolm's eyes on her from the front seat but couldn't bring herself to meet them. Shame burned in her chest. She was supposed to be better than this. She had a college degree, for God's sake. 2 years at Dallas Community College, studying early childhood education. She'd had plans, dreams. And now she was a homeless pregnant woman who collected cans on the highway. "Patricia, take us to Cedar Grove Medical," Malcolm said. "Dr. Okonkwo owes me a favor." "Mr. Rivers, I can't pay for a doctor," Amara said, her voice cracking. "I can barely feed my kids." "Did I ask you for money?" Malcolm turned in his seat to look at her directly. "Amara, I don't know your whole story yet. But I know what I see. I see a mother doing everything she can to keep her children fed and together. I see strength. And I see someone who needs help. So please, let me help." Jasmine, who had been silent since getting in the car, suddenly spoke up. "Are you an angel? Mama says angels come when you need them most." Malcolm's stern expression softened. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a man who remembers what it's like to be hungry. The medical clinic was in a part of Dallas Amara rarely saw anymore. The streets were clean, the buildings new and well-maintained. They walked through doors that opened automatically, into a lobby with real plants and comfortable chairs. The receptionist started to speak, but Malcolm held up a hand. "Tell Dr. Okonkwo that Malcolm Rivers is here. It's important." 5 minutes later, a tall woman with intricate braids and a warm Nigerian accent appeared. "Malcolm, what brings you to my clinic?" Then she saw Amara and the children, and her expression shifted to professional concern. "Come, let's get you into an examination room." The next hour passed in a blur. Dr. Okonkwo was thorough and gentle. She checked the baby's heartbeat, which came through strong and steady, making Amara cry with relief. She examined the cut on Amara's head, applied antibiotic ointment, and declared it superficial. She checked Amara's blood pressure, which was too high, and her weight, which was too low. "The baby is fine," Dr. Okonkwo said, "but Amara, you are not. You're malnourished and dehydrated. Your blood pressure concerns me. You need rest, proper nutrition, and significantly less stress." She paused. "Where are you living?" Amara couldn't lie to those kind eyes. "In my car." Dr. Okonkwo's expression tightened, but she didn't judge. She simply nodded. "I see. And the father?" "Gone. Family?" "My mother died when I was 19. No siblings. Marcus's family disowned him when he married me." Amara laughed bitterly. They thought he could do better than a poor girl from South Dallas. In the waiting room, Malcolm had bought Jasmine and DeAndre sandwiches and juice from the vending machine. They were eating like they hadn't seen food in days, which wasn't far from the truth. Malcolm watched them with an expression Amara couldn't quite read. When Dr. Okonkwo pulled him aside for a private conversation, Amara tried not to panic. She told herself he'd done enough already. If he just drove them back to Highway 87, she'd gather her cans and be grateful for the medical care. But when Malcolm came back into the waiting room, he didn't head for the door. Instead, he sat down across from Amara and folded his hands. "I'm going to make you an offer," he said. "And I want you to really think about it before you answer." Amara's heart began to pound. "What kind of offer?" "I own a company called Rivers Development. We build affordable housing across Texas. I also run a non-profit foundation that helps families in crisis. One of our programs provides transitional housing and job training." He leaned forward. "Amara, I want to offer you an apartment, rent-free for 6 months. In that time, we'll help you get job training, find employment, and get back on your feet. After 6 months, you'll pay reduced rent based on your income. The goal is to make you self-sufficient." It sounded too good to be true. Amara had learned the hard way that things that sounded too good to be true usually were. "What's the catch?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" Malcolm's expression didn't change. "I want you to succeed. That's all. No strings, no catches. Just a chance to help a family that needs it." "Why us? Why me? You don't even know me." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. "My sister's name was Grace. She was beautiful, smart, and she fell in love with the wrong man. He got her pregnant and left. She was too proud to ask for help, too ashamed to come home. I was building my first development, working 18-hour days, barely making ends meet myself. I kept telling her I'd help her soon, when I got ahead, when I had more money." Malcolm's voice cracked. They found her in her car on Christmas Eve, 15 years ago. She and her baby girl. Carbon monoxide poisoning. She'd been running the heater to keep warm and fell asleep. Amara's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh God. I'm so sorry. I've spent 15 years building my company and my foundation, trying to make up for the help I didn't give my sister. I can't save Grace. But I can stop other women from ending up like her." He looked directly into Amara's eyes. "So yes, I want something from you. I want you to take the help. I want you to let me do for you what I couldn't do for her. Because every time I save someone else, maybe I save her a little bit too." The room was silent except for the sound of Jasmine and DeAndre's quiet chatter in the corner. Amara looked at her children, then down at her belly where her unborn daughter grew. She thought about sleeping in the car, about the heat and the cold, about the constant hunger and fear. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. But hope? Maybe hope was something she could dare to reach for. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, please. We'll take your help." Malcolm smiled, relief clear on his face. But as they stood to leave, as Amara dared to believe that maybe things would be okay, she had no idea that accepting his help would unlock a mystery that would threaten everything. She didn't know that Malcolm Rivers had a secret. And she certainly didn't know that the apartment he was offering her held a connection to his past that would change all their lives forever. The apartment building sat in East Dallas, a renovated 1960s complex that Malcolm's company had transformed into affordable housing. The brick exterior had been freshly painted a warm terracotta, and flower boxes adorned every window. It looked nothing like the run-down places Amara had lived before. It looked like a home. "Unit 2B, Malcolm said, handing her a set of keys. "Second floor, corner unit. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The furniture is basic but functional. We'll get you set up with food assistance and connect you with our job training program starting next week." Amara's hands shook as she took the keys. They felt heavy, like they carried the weight of possibility. Jasmine and DeAndre pressed against her sides, staring up at the building with wide eyes. "Is this really ours, Mama?" DeAndre asked. "For now, baby. For now." Patricia, who had followed them in the SUV, helped carry up the bags of donated clothes and supplies that Malcolm had somehow arranged while they were at the clinic. The man worked fast. Too fast, almost. But Amara pushed the suspicious thought away. She was too tired to question good fortune. The apartment was small but clean. The walls were painted a soft yellow that caught the afternoon sunlight. The furniture was simple: a couch, a kitchen table with chairs, 2 twin beds in one room and a double bed in the other. But after months of sleeping in a car, it looked like a palace. Jasmine ran from room to room, squealing with delight. DeAndre discovered the bathtub and announced that he wanted to take a bath right now, immediately. Amara stood in the middle of the living room and cried. Not sad tears this time. Relief. Gratitude. Exhaustion. "The refrigerator is stocked with basics," Patricia said gently. "There's a washer and dryer in the basement. Quarters are in the kitchen drawer." Malcolm also set up a checking account with $500 to help you get started. "You can access it with this card." She pressed a debit card into Amara's hand. "The pin is taped to the back. Change it as soon as you can." "I don't know how to thank him," Amara whispered. "I don't know how to thank you." Patricia smiled. "Honey, just take care of yourself and those babies. That's all the thanks anyone needs." She paused at the door. "Malcolm is a good man. He's helped a lot of families. But he can seem intense sometimes, especially about this building. If you need anything, call me first, okay? My number is programmed in that phone he gave you." There was something in Patricia's tone that made Amara look up sharply. "What do you mean, intense about this building?" Patricia hesitated, as if weighing how much to say. This was the last property his sister was seen at before she died. She had applied for an apartment here, but there was a waiting list. Malcolm bought the building 5 years ago and renovated it in her honor. Every family that lives here, he sees as a second chance to save grace. A chill ran down Amara's spine despite the warm apartment. That's a lot of pressure." "It is," Patricia agreed. "But don't let it worry you. Just focus on getting back on your feet. You've got this." With a final wave, she was gone. That night, after the children had bathed and eaten real food, spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread, and milk, Amara tucked them into their beds. Their own beds. With clean sheets that smelled like lavender. "Mama, is Mr. Malcolm going to be our new daddy?" Jasmine asked sleepily. "No, baby. He's just a kind man helping us out." I wish we had a daddy again, DeAndre murmured. I miss daddy. Amara's throat tightened. I know, baby. I know. After they fell asleep, she stood in the shower for 20 minutes, letting hot water wash away months of dirt and fear. She washed her hair 3 times. She scrubbed until her skin was pink. And then she sat on the bathroom floor and sobbed, letting out all the terror and exhaustion she'd been holding in for her children's sake. Later, lying in her own bed for the first time in months, she should have felt peace. But something nagged at her. Malcolm's generosity seemed almost too perfect, too immediate. And Patricia's warning about his intensity echoed in her mind. She pushed the thoughts away. She was being paranoid. The man had helped her. He'd probably helped dozens of families. She needed to accept the blessing and move forward. The next morning, Amara woke to sunlight streaming through actual curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was and panicked, thinking she'd overslept in some parking lot and mall security would be banging on her window. Then she remembered. The apartment. Malcolm. Safety. There was a knock at the door at 9 o'clock. Amara opened it to find a woman in her 40s with warm brown skin and an infectious smile. Good morning. I'm Keisha, the building manager and your job training coordinator. Malcolm asked me to stop by and get you oriented. She held up a bag. I brought breakfast. I hope you like kolaches. Over coffee and pastries, Keisha explained the program. Job training sessions 3 times a week. Resume building. Interview prep. Childcare provided during training sessions. After 6 weeks, they'd help her find placement in her field or a related area. What did you study? Keisha asked, pulling out a tablet to take notes. Early childhood education. I wanted to be a preschool teacher. Keisha's eyes lit up. Perfect. There's a huge demand for qualified childcare workers. We have connections with several daycares and preschools. This is going to work out great. For the first time in months, Amara felt hope taking root. Real hope, not just desperate wishes. Over the next 2 weeks, life developed a rhythm. Mornings were for job training while Jasmine and DeAndre attended the free summer program in the community room. Afternoons were for appointments. More prenatal visits with Dr. Okonkwo, meetings with a social worker who helped her apply for food stamps and WIC, sessions with a financial counselor who taught her budgeting. Malcolm checked in occasionally, always professional, always kind. He brought books for the children. He made sure the air conditioning was working during a heat wave. He seemed genuinely invested in their success. But Amara started noticing odd things. The way Malcolm would sometimes stand outside the building at night, just staring up at the windows. The way he asked detailed questions about how she was settling in, what rooms the children liked best, whether she felt comfortable. The way he donated a specific rocking chair that now sat in her living room, a vintage piece that seemed oddly sentimental for a standard furnished unit. One afternoon, while the children played in the courtyard, Amara struck up a conversation with her neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Johnson who had lived in the building since Malcolm renovated it. He's a good man, Mrs. Johnson said, watching Malcolm's car pull up outside. But haunted, you know. Lost his sister in such a terrible way. Patricia told me a little about it, Amara said carefully. Mrs. Johnson lowered her voice. Did she tell you that Grace lived in your exact apartment? Unit 2B. That was hers, back before the renovation. Malcolm kept it empty for a year before he finally let anyone move in. You're the first family in that unit. The kolaches Amara had eaten for breakfast suddenly sat heavy in her stomach. Why didn't anyone tell me? Probably didn't want to spook you. It's not like the apartment is haunted or anything. Mrs. Johnson laughed. But Malcolm, he has this idea that if he fills Grace's apartment with a family he saves, he's somehow making amends. The last 2 families that were offered that unit turned it down once they learned the history. Guess they didn't tell you for a reason. That night, Amara looked at her apartment with new eyes. The rocking chair Malcolm had brought, had it been Grace's? The yellow walls, had Grace chosen that color? She was living in a dead woman's space, a memorial disguised as charity. She told herself it didn't matter. A roof was a roof. Help was help. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just accepting Malcolm's generosity. She was playing a role in his grief, standing in for a sister he couldn't save. The feeling intensified when she discovered the box. It was a Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks after they'd moved in. Amara was organizing the hall closet when she noticed a loose board in the back corner. When she pried it up, she found a small metal box hidden beneath. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to Malcolm Rivers. All from Grace. Unopened. The first one was dated 15 years ago, 2 months before Grace died. The last one was postmarked 3 days before Christmas Eve. The day before she was found in her car. Amara knew she shouldn't read them. They were private, painful, not meant for her eyes. But something compelled her to open the last letter. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting shaky. Malcolm, I know you're busy. I know you have your own life. But I'm scared. I'm so scared. The baby is due in 2 weeks and I have nowhere to go. I applied for the apartment like you suggested, but they said the waiting list is 6 months long. I can't wait 6 months. I need help now. Please, brother. I'm begging you. Don't let me disappear. The letter ended there. No signature. Just that desperate plea. Amara's blood ran cold. Malcolm had suggested Grace apply for this apartment. He'd known she needed help immediately. And he'd done nothing. Or had he? She looked at the postmark again. 3 days before Christmas. Had Malcolm ever received this letter? Or had Grace hidden it here when she came to the building, hoping somehow he'd find it? A knock on the door made her jump. She shoved the letters back in the box back under the floorboard, and pushed the board into place. Her heart hammered as she opened the door. Malcolm stood there, his expression unreadable. Amara, we need to talk. I need to tell you the truth about why I really brought you here. Amara's mouth went dry. She gripped the doorframe, acutely aware of the hidden box of letters just feet away in the closet. The truth, she managed to say. Malcolm looked tired in a way she hadn't seen before. The polish and confidence had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. In the living room, Jasmine and DeAndre were watching cartoons, their laughter a stark contrast to the tension that had suddenly filled the apartment. Malcolm sat on the edge of the couch, Grace's couch, Amara thought, and rubbed his face with both hands. I haven't been completely honest with you, he began. About why I stopped that day on Highway 87. It wasn't random, Amara. I was looking for you. Her blood turned to ice. What do you mean, looking for me? Not you specifically, but someone like you. A pregnant woman in crisis with children to feed. I drive that highway every Thursday morning. I've been doing it for 2 years, ever since I renovated this building. I'm looking for second chances. For do-overs. His voice cracked. I'm looking for my sister in every desperate woman I pass. Amara sank into the rocking chair, her mind reeling. You've been hunting for people to save? That sounds terrible when you say it like that. Malcolm looked at her with haunted eyes. But yes, the foundation is real. The help is real. But my motivation, it's not as pure as I made it seem. Every woman I help, every family I save, I'm trying to rewrite the story. To make it end differently. That's... Amara searched for words. That's disturbing, Malcolm. You're using people as therapy. I know. He stood, pacing the small living room. I know it's not healthy. My therapist tells me the same thing. But I can't stop. Every time I close my eyes, I see Grace's face. She was only 23 years old. Her baby would be 15 now. I could have helped her. I had the money by then. Not much, but enough to get her an apartment, to support her until the baby came. But I was angry. Angry at what? At her for getting involved with that man. At her for getting pregnant. At her for disrupting my plans. His voice turned bitter. I was 28, finally making something of myself, and she needed me to drop everything and save her. So I told her to be patient, to apply for affordable housing and wait, to give me time to finish my development project, and then I'd help her properly. He turned to face Amara. She didn't have time, and I knew it. Deep down, I knew she was in trouble, but I chose my ambition over my sister. The raw honesty in his confession left Amara shaken. She understood grief. She understood guilt. But this level of obsession, this need to recreate and redo the past, it crossed a line. Malcolm, I appreciate your help. God knows we needed it. But you can't use my family as a replacement for yours. That's not fair to us, and it's not healthy for you. I know. He sat back down, deflating. And I'm not trying to replace her. I need you to understand that this apartment, this building, it means everything to me. Grace stood in this exact spot. She looked at these walls and imagined a future. And then I failed her, and she died thinking she was worthless, that no one cared. Amara's anger softened despite herself. The man before her wasn't a villain. He was broken, trying to glue himself back together with the pieces of other people's lives. "What do you need from me?" she asked quietly. "Nothing. Everything." Malcolm looked at her desperately. "I need you to succeed. I need to watch you and your children thrive in this space where Grace never got the chance. I need to know that this time, I didn't fail." Is that too much to ask? Before Amara could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. "Interview set up for you at Little Scholars Preschool next Tuesday at 10 a.m. This is a real opportunity. The director loves your credentials. A job interview. A real chance at employment. The pathway to self-sufficiency." Everything Malcolm's program had promised. She looked at him, this complicated man with his complicated grief. "I'll succeed," she said firmly. "Not for you. Not to ease your guilt. But for my children. And for me. If that also helps you heal, then fine. But Malcolm, you need to promise me something. Anything. Get real help. Professional help. Keep seeing your therapist. Because I can't be responsible for your emotional well-being. I have enough to carry." He nodded slowly. "You're right. You're absolutely right." He stood to leave, then paused. "Amara, there's something else." Grace left things behind. Personal items that were in the apartment when she left. "I kept them. I thought maybe someday. I don't know what I thought. But I want you to have them. Not to use necessarily, but to know that someone else lived here, dreamed here. That this space holds history." "What kind of things?" "Journals. Baby clothes she'd bought. Some photographs. They're in a storage unit. I can bring them by if you want." Amara thought of the letters hidden in the closet. Malcolm didn't know they were there. Grace had hidden them, maybe meaning to mail them, maybe just to have a record of her desperation. Those letters were secrets. But these other items Malcolm was offering, those were memories he was choosing to share. "Okay," she said. "But not yet. Let me settle in first. Let me make this place ours before I learn too much about whose it was." Malcolm smiled sadly. "That's fair. Thank you, Amara, for understanding. For not running." After he left, Amara sat in Grace's rocking chair and cried. For Grace, who had died alone and afraid. For Malcolm, trapped in a guilt that might never release him. For herself and her children, caught in the crossfire of old grief while trying to build new hope. That night, after tucking the children into bed, she returned to the closet. She pulled up the loose board and took out the box of letters. She read them all, every desperate plea, every promise that things would get better, every expression of love for her unborn baby. The last letter was the hardest to read. "I'm not going to mail this," Grace had written. "I'm going to hide it here, in this apartment that could have been mine. If something happens to me, maybe someday someone will find it. Maybe they'll know I existed, that I tried. That I loved my baby girl even though I never got to hold her. Amara pressed the letter to her chest and sobbed. She understood that kind of desperation now. The fear that you'll disappear, that your children will disappear, that you'll become just another sad statistic. But she was still here. Her children were safe. And maybe, in some way, living well in this space was honoring Grace's memory more than Malcolm's obsessive guilt ever could. The interview at Little Scholars Preschool was in 5 days. Amara had a chance to turn this temporary help into permanent stability. She just had to keep her head down, ignore the ghosts in the walls, and focus on the future. What she didn't know was that the interview would reveal a connection so shocking that it would unravel everything. She didn't know that one of the people interviewing her would recognize her face. And she certainly didn't know that Grace's story and her own were about to intersect in a way that would expose secrets 15 years in the making. Now, before we continue with what happened at that interview, I want to hear from you. Have you ever received help from a stranger that changed your life? Or maybe you've been the one to help someone in need. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. And if you're enjoying this journey with Amara, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this goes. Also, let me know where you're watching from. Are you in the United States, Africa, or somewhere else? I love seeing how far these stories travel. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of Texas heat that made the air shimmer. Amara stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of the blue dress Keisha had helped her pick out from the donation closet. It fit well enough, though it was a bit tight across her 6-month pregnant belly. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she'd borrowed makeup from Patricia to cover the circles under her eyes. "You look beautiful, Mama," Jasmine said from the doorway. "Like a princess," DeAndre added, bouncing on his toes. Amara smiled at them in the mirror. "Thank you, babies. You two be good for Miss Keisha today, okay? This interview is really important." Little Scholars Preschool was in North Dallas, a 20-minute bus ride from the apartment. Malcolm had offered to have Patricia drive her, but Amara had declined. She needed to do this on her own, to prove to herself that she could navigate the world independently again. The preschool was housed in a renovated church, its playground filled with bright equipment and laughing children. Through the windows, Amara could see colorful classrooms with alphabet posters and tiny chairs. Her heart squeezed with longing. This was what she'd dreamed of when she was studying early childhood education. This was the future she'd lost when Marcus left. Maybe she could get it back. The receptionist, a young woman with box braids and a warm smile, checked her in. "Ms. Washington, they're ready for you in the conference room. Just through that door." Amara's hands trembled as she smoothed her dress one more time. She could do this. She had the education, the passion, the experience from her practicum placements. She just needed them to see past the homelessness, past the pregnancy, past the desperation. She opened the door and stepped inside. 3 people sat at the conference table. The first was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver locks, Director Carmen Hughes, according to the nameplate. The second was a younger man, probably the assistant director, with a tablet in front of him. The third person made Amara's blood freeze. She was a black woman in her early 40s, impeccably dressed in a burgundy suit. Her hair was cut short in a stylish fade, and her eyes were sharp, intelligent, assessing. But it wasn't her appearance that stopped Amara's breath. It was her face. She looked exactly like Malcolm Rivers. Same bone structure, same intense gaze, same expression of barely contained intensity. "Ms. Washington, please have a seat," Director Hughes said. "This is James Mitchell, our assistant director, and Teresa Richards, one of our board members and major donors." Teresa, not Grace. But the resemblance was impossible to ignore. Amara sat, trying to control her shaking hands. She was imagining things. Seeing ghosts where there were none. Malcolm had said Grace died 15 years ago. This woman was alive, successful, clearly thriving. But as the interview progressed, Amara couldn't focus. She answered questions about her education, her teaching philosophy, her experience with diverse learning needs. She described her practicum work, her passion for early literacy, her belief that every child deserved a nurturing environment. But all the while, she watched Teresa Richards. And Teresa was watching her back with an intensity that felt personal, as if she was searching for something in Amara's face. "Ms. Washington," Teresa said suddenly, interrupting a question from James about classroom management, "I notice you're currently living at Rivers Haven Apartments. How did you come to be there?" The room went silent. Director Hughes frowned slightly, as if the question was inappropriate. But Teresa leaned forward, her eyes locked on Amara's. I was homeless," Amara said, deciding honesty was her only option. "Living in my car with my 2 children. Malcolm Rivers found us collecting cans on the highway and offered us a place in his transitional housing program." "Malcolm Rivers," Teresa repeated, her voice strange. "And how is Malcolm these days?" He's been very kind. Very helpful." "I'm sure he has." Something flickered across Teresa's face. Anger, pain, bitterness. Amara couldn't tell. "Tell me, Ms. Washington, did Malcolm tell you about his sister Grace?" Director Hughes intervened. "Teresa, I'm not sure this is relevant to." "It's extremely relevant," Teresa snapped, her professional composure cracking. "Because I need to know what story he's telling now. What version of events he's created to justify his guilt." Amara's heart pounded. He said she died. That she was pregnant and homeless, and he didn't help her in time. That she died in her car. Teresa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what he said? That I died?" The room tilted. Amara gripped the edge of the table. "What? My name is Teresa Richards now. But I was born Grace Rivers." She stood, walking to the window. "And I didn't die 15 years ago. I just stopped existing to my brother." Director Hughes looked shocked. "Teresa, what are you talking about?" "My brother tells a very moving story," Teresa said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "About how he failed his poor, desperate sister. How she died alone and forgotten. How he spent 15 years trying to make amends. It's a beautiful narrative. Very sympathetic. Except it's a lie." She turned back to face Amara. "I was homeless that Christmas. I was desperate. But I didn't die, Ms. Washington. I survived. No thanks to Malcolm. A woman named Dorothy Richards found me sleeping in my car outside a church. She took me to a shelter, helped me deliver my baby safely, and eventually gave me a job in her nonprofit. She saved my life. And when I got back on my feet, when I tried to reach out to Malcolm to show him I'd made it, to introduce him to his niece, do you know what he did?" Amara shook her head, unable to speak. "He refused to see me. He said I'd embarrassed him, damaged his reputation by being homeless. He said if I really cared about his success, I'd stay away and let him pretend I didn't exist." Teresa's voice broke. "So I did. I changed my name, built a new life. I've been watching from a distance as he's turned my story into his redemption arc. He tells everyone I died because it's easier than admitting he chose his pride over his family." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The obsession with saving pregnant women. The memorial apartment. The guilt that drove him to patrol highways looking for second chances. Malcolm hadn't been mourning Grace's death. He'd been mourning his own failure, spinning it into tragedy because the truth was too shameful to face. "Where is your daughter now?" Amara asked quietly. Teresa's expression softened. "She's 14. Smart, beautiful, thriving. She doesn't know anything about Malcolm. I told her my brother died young. It seemed kinder than the truth. Does Malcolm know you're alive?" "I don't know. Maybe he's convinced himself the lie is true. Maybe he knows and just doesn't care. Either way, he's built an empire on my supposed death." She looked at Amara with sudden intensity. "And now he's found you. Put you in my old apartment. Made you his latest project. Tell me, Ms. Washington, does he watch you? Does he ask detailed questions about how you're settling in? Does he seem overly invested in your success?" "Yes," Amara whispered. "All of that. He's using you. using your family to play out the fantasy of saving me. And when you succeed, when you don't need him anymore, he'll find another desperate woman to project onto. It's a pattern. You're not the first family in that apartment, though you might be the first who's stayed. Director Hughes cleared her throat. Teresa, I think we should continue this conversation privately. Ms. Washington, perhaps we could reschedule. No, Amara said firmly. She stood, her hands on her pregnant belly, her mind reeling but her voice steady. I need to know the whole truth. All of it. Teresa studied her for a long moment. You're stronger than I was at your age. I like that. She glanced at Director Hughes. Give her the job. She's qualified, and she's not going to be intimidated by difficulty. Anyone who survives what she survived and still shows up ready to work deserves a chance. Teresa, we haven't finished the interview. I'm finished. She's hired. James, process her paperwork. Teresa grabbed her purse. Ms. Washington, can you meet me this evening? There's more you need to know. Things about Malcolm. Things about that apartment. Things that might put you and your children at risk. At risk? Amara's protective instincts flared. What kind of risk? Malcolm's obsession with saving me has made him unstable. The last family that lived in Unit 2B, they left in the middle of the night after 3 months. They filed a restraining order. Malcolm was entering the apartment when they weren't home, leaving gifts, watching them through the windows. Teresa's expression was grim. He's not dangerous, exactly. But he's not well. And you need to know what you're dealing with before it's too late to get out. Amara thought of her children sleeping safely in that apartment. Of the progress she'd made. Of the stability she'd finally found. And now this, the revelation that her savior was actually a disturbed man living out a delusion, and she was the latest player in his fantasy. I'll meet you, she said. But I'm not running. Not yet. I need this job. I need the apartment. I need time to make a plan. Teresa nodded with something like respect. Smart. Don't let him know you know the truth. Not until you're ready to move. He can be unpredictable when confronted. She scribbled an address on a business card. My office at 7 tonight. We'll talk about everything. And Ms. Washington, welcome to Little Scholars. You start Monday. Amara walked out of the preschool in a daze. She'd gotten the job. She'd gotten exactly what she needed. But the cost of that blessing was the knowledge that everything Malcolm had built, everything he'd offered, was constructed on a foundation of lies and obsession. And she was living in the center of his delusion, sleeping in a dead woman's apartment, except the woman wasn't dead. She was alive and angry and warning Amara that danger was closer than she'd realized. The bus ride home felt like a dream. When she got back to the apartment, Keisha was waiting with Jasmine and DeAndre, eager to hear how it went. Amara smiled and said it went well, said she got the job, said everything was perfect. But inside, she was already planning. Already calculating. Already figuring out how to protect her children from a kindness that had turned poisonous. That evening, she would learn the rest of the truth. And what Teresa told her would force Amara to make an impossible choice, accept Malcolm's help and risk her family's safety, or walk away and lose everything she'd gained. But first, she had to sit her children down and explain, as carefully as possible, that the angel who had saved them might actually be something much more complicated. And much more dangerous. Amara left Jasmine and DeAndre with Mrs. Johnson for the evening, claiming she had paperwork to complete for her new job. It wasn't entirely a lie. But as she rode the bus to Teresa's office in downtown Dallas, her stomach churned with anxiety that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Teresa's nonprofit, New Beginnings Foundation, occupied the 3rd floor of a modest building near the Arts District. The reception area was decorated with photographs of smiling families, children graduating from high school, women in business attire shaking hands with employers. Success stories. Transformations. Everything Malcolm claimed his foundation provided, but real this time. Authentic. Teresa met her at the door personally. Up close, the resemblance to Malcolm was even more striking. But where Malcolm carried tension in his shoulders, A tightness around his eyes. Teresa radiated a hard-won peace. She'd survived something terrible and come out the other side changed but unbroken. "Thank you for coming," Teresa said, leading her to a private office. "I know this must be overwhelming. Finding out your benefactor has been lying about something this significant." "I don't understand how he doesn't know you're alive," Amara said, sinking into the offered chair. "How is that possible? Didn't anyone tell him?" Teresa poured them both water from a pitcher on her desk. "It's complicated. After Dorothy Richards took me in, I gave birth to my daughter, Zara, at a charity hospital. I was registered under a different name. I was terrified Marcus would find me and try to take the baby. Marcus was... he was dangerous, Amara. Not just neglectful. Violent." Amara's hand instinctively moved to her belly. "I'm sorry. I can't imagine. After Zara was born, I did try to contact Malcolm. I called his office multiple times, left messages. He never called back. Finally, I went to one of his development sites in person. He was there, in his hard hat and his expensive boots, playing the role of the self-made man." Teresa's voice hardened. "I approached him with my baby in my arms. Do you know what he said to me?" Amara shook her head, dreading the answer. "He said, 'I thought you'd have the decency to disappear.' He said my homelessness reflected poorly on him. That potential investors were already asking questions about his family background, and he couldn't afford the liability of a sister who'd been living in her car. He offered me money, $10,000, to change my name, move to another state, and never contact him again." "That's monstrous," Amara whispered. "I was desperate. I took the money. I changed my name, stayed in Dallas but in different circles. I used that money to finish my degree and build a life for Zara. And I told myself Malcolm was dead to me. I even started believing it." She took a sip of water. "But then, about 5 years ago, I started hearing stories. Malcolm Rivers, the philanthropist. Malcolm Rivers, who renovated affordable housing in memory of his sister who died tragically. Malcolm Rivers, whose guilt over failing his sister drove him to help others." "He rewrote history," Amara said. "Exactly. And at first, I thought, let him have his redemption story. What do I care? But then I heard about the families. 3 different families placed in Unit 2B. All of them pregnant women with children. All of them with situations eerily similar to mine. And all of them leaving suddenly, frightened, refusing to say why." Teresa pulled out a file folder and slid it across the desk. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, restraining orders. Amara's hands trembled as she read. The first family, the Johnsons, not related to Mrs. Johnson in her building, had left after Malcolm was found in their apartment at 2 a.m. He'd claimed he was checking a reported gas leak, but there was no gas leak. He'd been sitting in the dark in the living room, just sitting there, when they came home from a late hospital visit. The second family, the Rodriguezes, had installed a security camera after items started going missing and reappearing in different locations. The footage showed Malcolm entering with a key, moving things around, sometimes just standing and staring at the walls. When confronted, he'd broken down crying, apologizing, saying he didn't know what came over him. The third family, the Washingtons, no relation to Amara, had lasted only 2 weeks. Malcolm had shown up during dinner multiple times, always with some excuse. A maintenance check. A welcome gift. A question about their comfort. The final straw was when their 5-year-old daughter reported that the nice man had been in her room while she was sleeping, leaving stuffed animals on her bed. "Oh God," Amara breathed. "The children." He went into the children's rooms. The police investigated. No evidence of anything inappropriate, thank God. Malcolm's lawyer claimed he was leaving surprise gifts and didn't want to wake anyone. The families were too frightened to press charges, they just wanted out. Malcolm's foundation paid them to sign NDAs and relocate. Teresa leaned forward. "Here's what I think is happening. Malcolm has convinced himself that I died in that apartment. He's turned it into a shrine. When he places families there, he's trying to recreate what should have happened, me, alive and thriving with my baby. But he can't separate fantasy from reality anymore. He needs to control the narrative, to insert himself into their lives, to make sure the story ends the way it should have ended with me. This is insane, Amara said. He needs psychiatric help. He's been in therapy for years, according to his assistant Patricia. But clearly, it's not enough. And Amara, you need to understand, you're not safe there. Maybe he hasn't done anything yet, but based on the pattern, it's only a matter of time. Amara thought of the letters hidden in the closet. Malcolm's letters from Grace, hidden and unopened. Had Teresa written those? Were they part of her desperate attempts to reach him before she gave up and changed her name? The letters, Amara said suddenly. I found letters hidden in the apartment. Addressed to Malcolm, from Grace. Unopened. Teresa went pale. What? In the closet, under a loose floorboard. Dozens of letters. The last one was postmarked 3 days before Christmas, 15 years ago. I wrote those letters, Teresa whispered. I wrote one every week for 6 months, begging him to help me. I hid them there because that apartment represented hope. I wanted him to find them, to understand how desperate I'd been. But when I went back to get them after Zara was born, the building was under renovation and I couldn't get in. She pressed her hands to her mouth. He never found them. All these years, and he never found them. He told me he had your journals and baby clothes in storage. That he'd saved your things. Those aren't mine. I took everything I owned when I left that car. Whatever he has, he manufactured or bought to fit the story. Teresa stood, pacing. He's created an entire false history. And now you're living in it. The office felt too small suddenly, the air too thin. Amara's baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her mother's distress. What do I do? Amara asked. I finally have a job. My children finally have stability. If I leave the apartment, I have nowhere to go. The job doesn't start until Monday, and even then, it'll be weeks before I get my first paycheck. Teresa sat back down, her expression conflicted. I want to tell you to leave immediately. But I understand you're trapped. So here's what I suggest. Stay for now, but be careful. Don't let Malcolm in when you're alone. Install your own locks if you can. Document everything. Every visit, every conversation, every moment that feels off. And start saving money. Every penny you can spare, save it. Because the moment you can afford to leave, you need to. Will you help me? Amara asked. Not with money. I'm not asking for charity. But maybe you could check on us sometimes? Let Malcolm know someone's watching. Teresa considered this. I've avoided confronting my brother for 5 years. I built my life on the principle of moving forward, not looking back. But maybe it's time. She pulled out her phone. Give me your number. I'll call you regularly. And Amara? That job at Little Scholars? It's real. I won't let my brother's issues interfere with your employment. You earned that position. They exchanged numbers, and Teresa walked her to the elevator. As Amara was about to leave, Teresa caught her arm. One more thing. If you do find more letters, more evidence of who I was before, don't tell Malcolm. That history belongs to me, not to his guilt narrative. And if things get dangerous, if you feel threatened at all, you call me immediately. I may have walked away from my brother, but I won't let him hurt another family. The bus ride back was a blur of anxiety and planning. Amara's mind raced through scenarios. How long could she stay in the apartment safely? How quickly could she save enough for first and last month's rent somewhere else? Could she trust Malcolm enough to accept his help while secretly planning her escape? When she got back to the building, Mrs. Johnson was waiting with sleeping children on her couch. They wore themselves out playing, she said fondly. That interview must have gone well. You look like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, but also like you're planning something. I got the job, Amara said quietly. I start Monday. That's wonderful, honey. Malcolm will be so pleased. Amara looked at the elderly woman, wondering how much she knew. How much she'd seen. Mrs. Johnson, in all the time you've lived here, have you ever seen Malcolm act strange? Mrs. Johnson's smile faded. Strange how? I don't know. Overly involved. Watching people too closely. The older woman was quiet for a long moment. There was a family here once, she finally said. Nice people. But they left real sudden-like. The mama, she told me Malcolm had keys to all the units for maintenance. Said she'd wake up sometimes and feel like someone had been in her apartment while she was sleeping. But Malcolm explained it, said he'd been checking for a water leak in the middle of the night. Still, she left. Did you believe him? About the water leak? Mrs. Johnson met her eyes. I believe Malcolm is a man trying to outrun his demons. And sometimes, demons make you do things that don't make sense to anyone else. You be careful, Amara. Lock your doors. Trust your instincts. That night, after putting Jasmine and DeAndre to bed, Amara returned to the closet. She pulled up the floorboard and took out all the letters. She read them one by one, hearing Teresa's younger voice crying out from the pages. The desperation. The love for her unborn child. The gradual loss of hope. The last letter ended with those haunting words. If something happens to me, maybe someday someone will find it. Maybe they'll know I existed. But Teresa had survived. She'd thrived. And now Amara held the proof of a past that Malcolm had tried to erase, evidence of the sister he'd abandoned and then recreated as a tragedy to absolve his guilt. She should give the letters to Teresa. They belonged to her. But something made Amara hesitate. These letters were leverage. Proof of Malcolm's lies. If things went wrong, if he became dangerous, she needed ammunition to protect herself and her children. She put the letters back, replaced the floorboard, and added her own letter to the collection. A letter to her children, just in case. Explaining everything. Telling them how much she loved them. Promising that everything she'd done was to keep them safe. Then she went to bed in the apartment that wasn't haunted by a dead woman but by a living one's stolen history. And she dreamed of highways and shopping carts and men in expensive suits who saved you only to trap you in their unfinished stories. Tomorrow, she would start planning her escape. But tonight, she would rest in the eye of the storm, knowing that the worst was still to come. The weekend passed in tense normalcy. Amara took Jasmine and DeAndre to the library, letting them pick out books while she researched apartment listings and calculated budgets. She needed at least $2,000 saved before she could even think about moving. First month's rent, deposit, utility connections. On a preschool teacher's salary, even with assistance programs, it would take months. Months of living under Malcolm's watchful eye. He called Saturday afternoon, his voice warm and congratulatory. Patricia told me you got the job at Little Scholars. I'm so proud of you, Amara. This is exactly what the program is designed to do. Thank you, she said, keeping her voice neutral. I really appreciate everything you've done. I'd like to take you and the children to dinner tomorrow. To celebrate. There's a family-friendly restaurant near the building that... Actually, we have plans, Amara lied quickly. Church with Mrs. Johnson, and then the kids have a playdate. But thank you for the offer. There was a pause on the line. Church? I didn't know you were religious. The comment felt invasive, too personal. How much did he think he had the right to know about her life? We're exploring different communities, she said carefully. Trying to build a support network. Of course. That's wise. Another pause. Amara, is everything okay? You sound distant. Her heart hammered. Could he sense that something had changed? That she knew. Just tired. The pregnancy is getting harder. I'm only in my 6th month, but I feel huge already. You should rest more. Don't push yourself too hard with the new job. I can talk to Director Hughes, see if they can accommodate. No, Amara said, too sharply. She softened her tone. No, thank you. I want to do this on my own. To prove I can handle it. Of course. I understand. But his voice had an edge now, something tight and controlled. Well, I'll let you rest. But, Amara, if you need anything at all, you call me. Day or night. That's what I'm here for. After he hung up, Amara stood at her window, looking down at the parking lot. Malcolm's black Mercedes was parked near the building entrance. He was just sitting there, engine off, looking up at the windows. Looking, she realized with creeping horror, directly at her apartment. She stepped back from the window, heart racing. How long had he been there? Was he watching to see if she'd lied about the church plans? Or was this just another part of his routine, his obsessive need to monitor the families in his sister's apartment? She pulled out her phone and texted Teresa, "He's parked outside the building. Just sitting in his car, watching." The response came quickly, "Document it. Take a photo if you can. And Amara, trust your instincts. If you feel unsafe, get out now. Money isn't worth your life." But Amara had been poor. She'd been homeless. She knew exactly what money was worth. It was worth safety, stability, a roof over her children's heads. It was worth enduring discomfort, even fear, for a little while longer. She took a photo of Malcolm's car, noting the timestamp. Then she closed the curtains and tried to pretend she hadn't seen him. Monday morning arrived with the promise of new beginnings. Amara dressed carefully in clothes Keisha had helped her select, professional but comfortable, accommodating her growing belly. She braided Jasmine's hair and made sure DeAndre's shirt was tucked in. They would attend the preschool summer program while she worked, which meant they'd all be together in the same building. Safe. Supervised. Away from Malcolm's reach. Little Scholar's preschool felt like a sanctuary. Director Hughes welcomed her warmly, introduced her to the other teachers, and showed her to her classroom, a sunny space with low shelves full of books, a reading corner with cushions, and walls decorated with children's artwork. "You'll be co-teaching with Tanya for the first 2 weeks," Director Hughes explained. "She's been here 5 years and knows our curriculum inside out. After that, you'll take over the 3-year-old class on your own." Tanya was a plump woman in her 30s with infectious energy and a laugh that filled the room. She hugged Amara on sight. "Girl, I heard about your journey. You're going to do amazing here. And don't worry about anything, we take care of our own." The morning flew by in a whirlwind of circle time, art projects, and playground supervision. The children were beautiful, energetic, eager to learn. Amara felt something in her chest loosen, something that had been tight since Marcus left. This was purpose. This was meaning. This was the life she'd dreamed of building. During lunch, Teresa appeared in the doorway of the staff room. "Ms. Washington, could I speak with you for a moment?" They walked to Teresa's board member office, a small space she used when visiting the preschool. Teresa closed the door and handed Amara an envelope. "What's this?" Amara asked. "Open it." Inside was a check for $3,000. Amara's hands shook. "Teresa, I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not charity. It's restitution." Teresa's voice was firm. "My brother used money he should have spent helping me to build his empire. This is a fraction of what I would have received if he'd supported me properly. Take it. Use it to get out of that apartment as soon as possible. I don't know what to say. Say you'll be smart. Say you'll protect your children. Say you won't let misplaced loyalty to a man who's using you keep you in danger." Teresa gripped her shoulders. "Amara, I've been where you are. Desperate, willing to accept help from anyone, even when something felt wrong. Don't make my mistakes." Amara folded the check and put it in her pocket. "I'll look for apartments this week. But I need to be careful. If Malcolm finds out I'm planning to leave, he'll spiral." "I know." Teresa sighed. "That's why you need to be strategic. Don't let him know you're looking. When you find a place, move quickly. One day while he's at work, just pack up and go. What if he comes after us? Then you document it and file for a restraining order. And Amara? If it comes to that, I'll testify. I'll tell the court everything about his pattern of behavior. I'm done protecting him." That evening, Amara began her apartment search in earnest. She called landlords, filled out applications, explained her employment situation. Some places rejected her immediately. Pregnant, recently homeless, no rental history. Others were possibilities, though none felt as safe or comfortable as the apartment she was preparing to leave. On Wednesday, Malcolm showed up at the preschool pickup time. Amara saw him through the window, talking to the playground supervisor. Her blood ran cold. What was he doing here? How did he know where she worked? Of course he knew. He'd helped arrange the interview. But his presence felt like a violation, a reminder that he saw himself as part of her life in a way that went beyond benefactor. She collected Jasmine and DeAndre quickly, hoping to avoid him. But he was waiting by the gate. "Malcolm, what are you doing here?" His smile was warm, but his eyes were intense, searching. "I wanted to see where you're working. To see you in your element. You look happy, Amara. This suits you." "Thank you, but you really didn't need to come all the way here." "I'm fine. We're fine. I know you are. I wanted to make sure." He crouched down to the children's level. "How was school, kids? Did you have fun?" DeAndre, too young to sense the tension, launched into an enthusiastic description of the day's activities. Jasmine stayed quiet, pressed against her mother's leg. She was more perceptive, Amara realized. She felt the wrongness of this interaction. "That's wonderful," Malcolm said, standing. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. There's a charity gala this Saturday, a fundraiser for the foundation. I'd love for you to attend. We could introduce you as one of our success stories. Show donors the real impact of their contributions. I don't have anyone to watch the kids. And I don't have anything to wear to a gala. I'll arrange childcare. And I'll have Patricia take you shopping for a dress. It would mean so much, Amara. To show people what's possible. You're an inspiration." There was no good way to refuse without raising suspicion. "Okay," she said reluctantly. "But just for a few hours. I don't want to leave the kids for too long." His face lit up with genuine joy. "Perfect. This is going to be perfect. You'll see. This is the beginning of something wonderful." After he left, Tanya came over. "Who was that?" "My landlord. Sort of. It's complicated. He gives me weird vibes," Tanya said bluntly. "Like he's trying too hard to be helpful. You know what I mean." "Yeah," Amara said quietly. "I know exactly what you mean." That night, she told Teresa about the gala. Teresa's response was immediate and alarmed. "Don't go. This is escalation. He's trying to bind you closer, make you part of his public narrative. Once you're his success story on display, it'll be harder to leave without seeming ungrateful." But Amara had already agreed. Backing out would make Malcolm suspicious. And she needed just a little more time, one more paycheck, one more month to find the right apartment, to build enough savings cushion to move safely. "I'll go," she told Teresa. "But I'll be careful. I won't let him control the narrative." "Famous last words," Teresa muttered. "Call me immediately after. I want to know you're okay." The week passed in mounting tension. Patricia took Amara shopping, helping her select a simple but elegant navy dress that accommodated her pregnant belly. Jasmine and DeAndre would stay with Mrs. Johnson during the gala. Everything was arranged with Malcolm's characteristic efficiency. Saturday evening, Malcolm picked her up in his Mercedes. He looked distinguished in a tailored tuxedo, every inch the successful philanthropist. But Amara couldn't look at him without seeing the desperate letters hidden in her closet, without hearing Teresa's warnings echoing in her mind. The gala was held at a downtown hotel, a glittering affair with live music, champagne, and well-dressed donors. Malcolm introduced her to everyone: board members, business partners, politicians. "This is Amara Washington, one of our residents. She was homeless 3 months ago, and now she's a preschool teacher. This is what Rivers Foundation does." Amara smiled and shook hands and told her story over and over. But each retelling felt like a piece of herself being given away, her trauma packaged into a neat narrative for wealthy people's consumption. Then she saw him across the room, Marcus. Her ex-husband, the man who'd abandoned her and their children, was standing near the bar, laughing with a woman in a red dress. He looked prosperous, well-fed, happy. Everything Amara had struggled to survive, he'd simply walked away from without consequence. The room tilted. Amara grabbed a nearby chair for support. Amara. Malcolm was at her elbow immediately. Are you all right? Is it the baby? That man, she whispered. By the bar. That's Marcus. My ex-husband. Malcolm's expression darkened. He's here? At my event. I don't understand. How? Why? He works for one of our contractor partners. I didn't make the connection. Washington is a common name. Malcolm's jaw clenched. Do you want to leave? I can get you out of here right now. But before Amara could answer, Marcus turned and saw her. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by shock, then something uglier. Disgust. He crossed the room toward them, and Amara's world shrank to the thundering of her heartbeat and the approaching figure of the man who destroyed her life. This was about to get much worse. Marcus stopped 3 feet away, his eyes traveling from Amara's face down to her pregnant belly, then back up with an expression that made her skin crawl. Amara? What are you doing here? I could ask you the same question. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Though I suppose you clean up well when you're not abandoning your family. The woman in the red dress appeared at Marcus's side. Baby, who is this? Nobody, Marcus said quickly. Just someone I used to know. Nobody. Amara's voice rose. I'm the mother of your children, Marcus. The woman you left with nothing. The family you walked away from like we were garbage. People nearby were starting to stare. Malcolm stepped forward, his presence commanding. Mr. Washington, I think it's time for you to leave. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Malcolm Rivers. This is my event. And you're making one of my guests uncomfortable. Your guest. Marcus laughed, cruel and sharp. You're calling her your guest? Man, do you know where I found her 3 months ago? Living in her car, digging through trash. And now she's at a gala in a fancy dress? What is she to you, Rivers? What's she doing for you to earn all this? The implication hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Malcolm's voice went deadly quiet. Security. Remove this man immediately. You think you know her? Marcus called out as 2 security guards approached. You think she's some charity case worth saving? She's manipulative, lazy, always looking for someone else to take care of her. That's why I left. I was tired of carrying dead weight. Dead weight. The words burst from Amara before she could stop them. I was working 2 jobs while you sat on the couch playing video games. I was pregnant with our 3rd child while you spent our rent money on your friends. You left because you're a coward who couldn't handle responsibility. Get him out, Malcolm ordered. The security guards grabbed Marcus's arms, but he jerked away, pulling free for one more moment. You want to know the real reason I left? Marcus's voice was vicious now. Because that baby you're carrying, I hope it's not mine. I hope you found someone else, because I don't want anything to do with another burden. The words hit like a physical blow. Amara's hand flew to her stomach protectively. Around them, the crowd murmured with shock and pity. This was a spectacle now, her pain on display for strangers to consume. The security guards finally dragged Marcus toward the exit. The woman in red followed, throwing Amara a look that was half pity, half contempt. As if Amara was the problem, not the man who'd abandoned his family. Malcolm's hand was on her back, warm and steady. Come on. Let's get you somewhere private. He guided her through the crowd to a small office off the main ballroom. Amara sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. The baby kicked hard, as if responding to her mother's distress. "I'm sorry," Malcolm said, crouching beside her. "I had no idea he would be here. If I'd known." "It's not your fault." Amara wiped her eyes angrily. "God, I can't believe I let him get to me like that. I should have been stronger." "You were strong. You stood up to him. You defended yourself." Malcolm handed her a glass of water. "That took courage. I humiliated myself. In front of all those people. Your donors. I ruined your event. You didn't ruin anything. He did. And Amara, those people out there? Most of them are on your side. They saw a man attack a pregnant woman and they're disgusted by him, not you." She wanted to believe that. But she'd seen the looks, heard the whispers. She was the spectacle, the drama, the homeless woman who'd somehow infiltrated their world. "I want to go home," she whispered. "Please, I just want to go home." "Of course. I'll drive you right now." The ride back was silent. Amara stared out the window, watching the glittering downtown give way to quieter neighborhoods. When they reached River's Haven, Malcolm walked her to her door. "Amara, I know tonight was terrible, but I want you to know something." He took her hands in his. "You're not alone anymore. You have me. You have the foundation. You have a community. Marcus was wrong about you. You're not a burden. You're strong and capable and worthy of so much more than he ever gave you." The words should have been comforting. But his hands on hers felt too tight, too possessive. His eyes were too intense, searching her face for something she couldn't name. "Thank you," she said, gently pulling her hands away. "I appreciate everything you've done. But I'm tired. I need to get the kids for Mrs. Johnson and put them to bed." "Of course." He stepped back, but hesitated. "Amara, can I ask you something? That baby you're carrying, is it Marcus's?" The question was invasive, inappropriate. But his expression was so earnest, so concerned, that she answered without thinking. "Yes. I was already pregnant when he left." Something flickered across Malcolm's face. Disappointment? Relief? She couldn't tell. Does he have any legal rights? Could he come back and try to claim the baby? "I don't know. I hope not. But he made it pretty clear tonight that he wants nothing to do with us." "Good." Malcolm's voice was fierce. "You and your children deserve better. You deserve a father figure who's present, who cares, who protects." The way he was looking at her made Amara's skin prickle with warning. This wasn't just about being a benefactor anymore. There was something else in his eyes. Something that felt like ownership. "Good night, Malcolm," she said firmly, opening her door. "Good night. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all." After collecting her sleeping children from Mrs. Johnson and tucking them into bed, Amara called Teresa. "He saw Marcus tonight," she said without preamble. "My ex-husband was at the gala. He humiliated me in front of everyone. And Malcolm. Teresa, the way he looked at me afterward. The way he asked about the baby. It felt wrong." "What did he say?" "He wanted to know if Marcus had any legal rights to the baby. And when I said Marcus didn't want anything to do with us, Malcolm looked pleased. Like he was glad there was no competition." Teresa was quiet for a long moment. "Amara, I think my brother is developing feelings for you. Or rather, he's transferring his feelings about me onto you. He sees you as Grace 2.0, the version he gets to save and protect and control." "That's insane. It's obsession. And it's dangerous. You need to move. This week. Use the money I gave you and find somewhere, anywhere else to live. I've been looking, but most places won't rent to someone with my history. And the ones that will are in terrible neighborhoods or cost more than I can afford even with your help. Then stay with me temporarily. I have a guest room. You and the kids can crash there until you find something." Amara wanted to accept. But leaving Malcolm's apartment for Teresa's house felt like escalating the situation to a point of no return. Let me think about it. I just need a few more days to figure things out.
You don't have a few more days, Teresa said urgently.
Amara, listen to me. When my brother gets fixated on something, when his fantasy takes hold, he stops seeing reality. He'll convince himself that you need him, that you belong to him in some way. And when that happens, when you inevitably try to establish boundaries, he won't handle it well. What do you mean, won't handle it well? I mean the last woman who tried to leave his program early ended up with her car's brake lines cut. The blood drained from Amara's face. What? It couldn't be proven. She had no evidence it was him. But she told me Malcolm had been calling her constantly, showing up at her work, insisting she wasn't ready to leave. 2 days after she moved out, her brakes failed. She crashed into a telephone pole. Survived, thank God, but barely. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't want to terrify you. I thought if you were careful, if you played along for a while, you could get out safely. But after tonight, after what you're describing, I don't think we have time for careful anymore. Amara looked around the apartment, this place that had seemed like salvation and was actually a trap. Okay. I'll come to your place. Tomorrow. I'll tell Malcolm I need some time away after the confrontation with Marcus. That I need space to process. Good. Pack tonight. Pack everything. Don't leave anything behind that you can't replace. After hanging up, Amara began gathering their belongings as quietly as possible. Clothes, toys, documents, everything that mattered fit into 3 suitcases and 2 garbage bags. They'd arrived with nothing. They'd leave with almost as little. She was folding Jasmine's favorite blanket when she heard it, a key turning in her lock. Her door was opening. It was nearly midnight. No maintenance issue could justify this. Amara grabbed her phone, her heart hammering, and crept toward the living room. Malcolm stood in her doorway, silhouetted by the hallway light. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring into her apartment. In his hands was something small and white. A stuffed animal. A teddy bear. Malcolm. Her voice cracked. What are you doing? He startled, as if he'd forgotten where he was. Amara. I'm sorry. I brought this for the baby. For when she arrives. I wanted to leave it as a surprise. He held up the bear. It was Grace's. Or rather, it was supposed to be. I bought it for her baby before everything happened. It's midnight. You can't just let yourself into my apartment at midnight. I know it looks bad. But I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about tonight, about Marcus and how he treated you. I wanted you to know that not all men are like him. That some of us keep our promises. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Amara backed up, her hand moving to her phone. Malcolm, you need to leave. Now. I will. I just need you to understand something first. His voice was urgent, desperate. You're safe here. You and your children. This apartment, this building, it's protected. Grace wasn't protected, but you are. I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens to you. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to take care of you. The way I should have taken care of her. He set the bear on her coffee table with trembling hands. Do you know what the worst part is? The worst part is knowing that if I'd just helped her, if I'd just given her this apartment when she needed it, she'd still be alive. Her baby would be 15 years old. And I'd have a niece who knew my name. Amara's mind raced. Should she tell him the truth? That Grace was alive? That his entire narrative was built on a lie? Or would that make him more dangerous? Malcolm, Grace's death wasn't your fault. Yes, it was. His voice rose, harsh and broken. It was absolutely my fault. And I've spent 15 years trying to fix it. Trying to save her over and over again through other people. But it's never enough. They always leave. They always reject what I'm trying to give them. Because what you're trying to give them isn't help. It's control. The words came out before Amara could stop them. Malcolm stared at her. What? You're not helping people move forward. You're trapping them in your guilt, making them play out a story that has nothing to do with them and everything to do with your need for absolution. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "Is that what you think I'm doing to you? I think you're a good man with good intentions who's been damaged by grief. But Malcolm, I'm not Grace. I'm not your second chance. I'm just a woman trying to survive and raise my kids." His expression crumpled. I know you're not her. But when I look at you, when I see you here in this space, for a moment, I can pretend the story ended differently. That I was the brother I should have been. That someone was saved. Someone was saved. Me. You did save me, Malcolm. But now you have to let me go. Go. Panic flashed across his face. You're leaving. Amara realized her mistake too late. The suitcases were visible in the bedroom doorway. The apartment had the half-empty look of a place being abandoned. Malcolm saw them. His face went pale, then red. You're leaving. Tonight. Right now. Malcolm. After everything I've done. After everything I've given you. You're just going to disappear. His voice was rising, spiraling. Just like everyone else. Just like Grace. Everyone leaves. Everyone abandons me. I'm not abandoning you. I'm grateful for your help. But I need to build my own life now. That's what this program is supposed to do, right? Make people self-sufficient. You're not ready. You can't afford another place. Where will you go? I have a plan. What plan? Tell me your plan, Amara. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like you're making a mistake. A terrible mistake that's going to hurt you and your children. The threat in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Amara's hand tightened on her phone. I need you to leave. Or I'm calling the police. Malcolm stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a broken, bitter sound. The police. Of course. Because I'm the villain in this story. The evil landlord who helped you when no one else would. The man who gave you a job and a home and asked for nothing in return except gratitude. You asked for more than gratitude. You asked to control my life. I asked to be part of your life. He was shouting now, his careful control completely shattered. I asked to matter. To be more than just a checkbook. But you're like everyone else. You take what you need and then you run. Down the hall, Amara heard a door open. Mrs. Johnson's voice called out, Everything all right in there? Malcolm froze. Reality seemed to crash back over him. He looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time, then at Amara's terrified face. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I would never hurt you. You have to believe that. Just leave. Please. He backed toward the door, his face crumbling. I was trying to save you. That's all I've ever tried to do. Save someone. Anyone. To make up for the one person I couldn't save. Goodbye, Malcolm. He left, stumbling into the hallway. Mrs. Johnson was there, her phone in her hand, watching him with wary eyes. Malcolm walked past her without a word, down the stairs and out of the building. Amara locked her door, engaged the chain, and slid down to the floor, shaking. She called Teresa. I need you to come get us. Right now. Tonight. He was in my apartment. He has a key. He's not stable. I'm on my way. Pack your kids and meet me in the parking lot in 15 minutes. And Amara? If he comes back before I get there, you call 911. Don't hesitate. Don't try to reason with him. Just call. Amara woke Jasmine and DeAndre, dressed them quickly, and carried their groggy bodies down to the parking lot with their bags. Mrs. Johnson followed, her face creased with concern. I knew something was wrong with that boy, the elderly woman said. I knew it. You did the right thing, honey. You get out of here and you don't look back. Teresa's car pulled up 13 minutes later. She helped load the bags and children, then turned to Amara. You're safe now. I've got you. As they drove away, Amara looked back at River's Haven one last time. The building where Grace had hoped to build a life, where Malcolm had built a shrine to his guilt, where 3 families had come seeking help and fled in fear. She'd escaped. But at what cost? And more importantly, would Malcolm let her go? Or was this just the beginning of something much worse? Before we find out what happens next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from help because it came with too many strings attached? Sometimes the hardest thing is recognizing when kindness turns into control. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who loves a good psychological thriller. And don't forget to smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Now, let's see what Malcolm does next. Teresa's house was in a quiet suburb of North Dallas, a modest 2-story with a well-kept lawn and security cameras visible at every corner. As they pulled into the driveway, a teenage girl appeared at the front door, tall, with Teresa's eyes and a cascade of natural curls. That's Zara, Teresa said softly. My daughter. Your baby's cousin, technically, though she doesn't know about Malcolm yet. Zara helped carry bags inside, eyeing Amara and the children with open curiosity. Mom said you needed a place to stay for a while. The guest room is upstairs, second door on the right. I put out fresh towels. Thank you, Amara whispered, overwhelmed by the simple kindness. Once Jasmine and DeAndre were settled in bed, Amara and Teresa sat at the kitchen table with hot tea. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Zara's music playing upstairs. I filed a police report, Teresa said, pulling out her phone. Unauthorized entry, harassment, stalking. I documented everything you told me, plus the pattern with the other families. It might not be enough for charges, but it's a start. A paper trail. He'll know it was me who reported him. Good. Let him know you're not going to be silent. Let him know there are consequences. Teresa reached across the table and squeezed Amara's hand. You did the right thing. The brave thing. Most people stay because it's easier than running. I stayed too long as it is. You stayed as long as you needed to. You got the job, made connections, built a foundation. That's not nothing, Amara. You turned his twisted help into real opportunity. That takes skill. Over the next few days, Amara began to breathe again. She continued working at Little Scholars, dropping Jasmine and DeAndre off each morning and picking them up each evening. Director Hughes knew about the situation, Teresa had briefed her, and made sure security was tight. No unauthorized visitors. No exceptions. Malcolm called 17 times the first day. Then 23 the second. Amara didn't answer. He left voicemails, each one cycling through emotions, apologetic, angry, desperate, threatening, then apologetic again. I'm sorry for scaring you. I just want to talk. You can't just abandon the program. We have a contract. Please, Amara. I need to know you're okay. The kids are okay. You're making a mistake. You'll see. You'll come back. I only ever wanted to help you. Why can't you see that? On the third day, he stopped calling. The silence was somehow more terrifying than the barrage of messages. He's planning something, Teresa said grimly. When Malcolm goes quiet, it means he's thinking. Strategizing. What can he do? I don't live in his building anymore. I don't owe him anything. He paid your security deposit at Little Scholars' summer program. He facilitated your job interview. He has financial ties to the preschool through his foundation's donations. If he wanted to make trouble, he could. The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Amara had been so focused on escaping the apartment, she hadn't considered how deeply Malcolm's influence extended into other areas of her life. On Thursday, exactly 1 week after she'd left Rivers Haven, Amara received a certified letter. It was from Malcolm's lawyer. The letter detailed breach of contract. The Rivers Foundation Transitional Housing Program required participants to remain in the housing for a minimum of 6 months. By leaving early, Amara had violated the agreement. She now owed $4,500, the fair market value of 3 months' rent, utilities, and furnishings. "This is insane," Amara said, her hands shaking as she read. "There was no contract. I never signed anything." "He's making it up," Teresa said, reading over her shoulder. "Or he retroactively created paperwork. Either way, he's using the legal system to punish you for leaving." "I don't have $4,500. Even with your help, even with my job, I can't." "You're not paying him a dime. This is harassment disguised as a legal claim. My lawyer will handle it." Teresa pulled out her phone. "But Amara, this confirms what I suspected. Malcolm isn't going to let you go peacefully. He's going to make your life as difficult as possible until you either come back or break completely." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She kept checking her phone, expecting threatening messages. She kept looking out the window, half convinced she'd see Malcolm's Mercedes parked on the street. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed menacing. At 2 a.m., her phone finally buzzed. But it wasn't Malcolm. It was an unknown number with a text message, "You should ask Teresa about the fire." Amara stared at the message, her heart pounding. What fire? She crept downstairs, careful not to wake anyone. Teresa was still up, working on her laptop in the living room. "Teresa, what fire?" Teresa looked up, startled. "What?" "I just got a text. From an unknown number. It said I should ask you about the fire." The color drained from Teresa's face. She closed her laptop slowly. "Malcolm. It has to be Malcolm. He's the only one who knows." "Knows what?" Teresa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with old pain. "The year after Zara was born, after I'd changed my name and started rebuilding my life, my apartment caught fire. It was ruled an accident. Faulty wiring. But I always wondered. Malcolm had tried to contact me a few weeks before. I'd refused to meet him. And then, suddenly, my home was burning." "You think he started it?" "I think it's a hell of a coincidence. But there was no proof. The investigation found nothing suspicious. And I had no evidence Malcolm had even been in the area." She rubbed her face tiredly. "I told myself I was being paranoid. That grief and trauma were making me see threats where there were none. But now, with this text, he's threatening me. He's saying he could do the same thing here. Or he's trying to scare you. To make you think I'm not safe either. To isolate you." Teresa grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police. This is a direct threat." But when the police arrived, they were less helpful than Teresa had hoped. The text came from a burner phone. No way to trace it. No explicit threat, just an ominous statement. Without more evidence, there was nothing they could do. "Keep documenting everything," the officer advised. "If he contacts you again, if you see him near your home or workplace, call us immediately. We'll have a patrol car drive by regularly, just to be visible." After they left, Amara felt more vulnerable than ever. Malcolm was out there somewhere, watching, planning, making moves they couldn't anticipate. "Maybe I should go back," she said quietly. "Maybe if I apologize, if I say I overreacted." "Absolutely not." Teresa's voice was fierce. "That's exactly what he wants. He wants you scared and compliant. But Amara, if you go back, it will only get worse. Abusers escalate when they regain control. And that's what Malcolm is, in his own twisted way, an abuser." The next morning, Director Hughes called Amara into her office. Her expression was troubled. "Amara, I need to talk to you about something sensitive. Malcolm Rivers contacted me yesterday. He expressed concerns about your stability. He said you left his program prematurely, that you might be experiencing a mental health crisis, and that he's worried about your ability to care for your children while working." Amara felt like she'd been punched. "That's not true." None of that is true. I didn't think it was. But he's requesting that we reconsider your employment. He suggested that placing you in a classroom with vulnerable children might be premature given your emotional state. Director Hughes's expression was sympathetic but firm. I need to ask you directly, are you okay? Is there anything I should be concerned about? I'm fine. I left his apartment because he was inappropriate. He was letting himself in at night, showing up unannounced, becoming obsessive. Teresa can confirm everything. I believe you. And Teresa has already briefed me on Malcolm's history. But Amara, you need to understand the position this puts me in. Malcolm's foundation is one of our major donors. If he threatens to pull funding, I have a board to answer to. The reality crashed over Amara like a wave. Even here, in the job she'd earned on her own merit, Malcolm's influence reached. He could take this away from her. He could take everything away. What do you want me to do? She asked quietly. Nothing. You keep being the excellent teacher you've been this week. You keep showing up and doing your job. And I'll handle Malcolm. I'll make it clear that personnel decisions are made by me, not by donors, regardless of how much money they contribute. Director Hughes leaned forward. But Amara, I need you to be careful. Document everything he does. Every call, every text, every contact. Because if this escalates, if he tries to interfere with your employment again, I'll need evidence to justify cutting ties with his foundation. That evening, as Amara was leaving the preschool with her children, she saw him. Malcolm stood across the street, just watching. He didn't approach. Didn't call out. Just stood there, his eyes locked on her, his expression unreadable. Security was already moving toward him. Director Hughes had been serious about protection, but Malcolm simply turned and walked away before they could reach him. Mama, who was that man? Jasmine asked. Nobody, baby. Just nobody. But as they drove back to Teresa's house, Amara couldn't shake the image of Malcolm standing there, watching. He wasn't going to let her go. He was going to haunt her, hovering on the edges of her life, waiting for a weakness, a vulnerability, a moment when she was alone. That night, Amara made a decision. She couldn't live like this, constantly looking over her shoulder, jumping at shadows, waiting for Malcolm to make his next move. She needed to confront him directly, to make it clear that she wasn't coming back, that she wasn't his to save or control or punish. I need to talk to him, she told Teresa. Face to face. With witnesses present. I need to end this. That's a terrible idea. You're giving him exactly what he wants, access to you. I'm giving him closure. A definitive no. Because right now, he still thinks there's a chance. He thinks if he just tries hard enough, manipulates enough, I'll come back. Teresa studied her for a long moment. If you're going to do this, we do it on our terms. Public place. Multiple witnesses. And I'm coming with you. It's time Malcolm and I had a conversation anyway. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop near the preschool, Sunday afternoon when Zara could watch the children. Amara texted Malcolm from Teresa's phone. This is Amara. I'm willing to meet and talk. But there are conditions. Public place, Teresa will be there, and this is the only conversation we're going to have. After this, you leave me alone. Permanently. His response came immediately. Yes. Anything. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to explain. Sunday arrived too quickly. As Amara dressed, her hands trembled. She was about to face the man who'd saved her life and then tried to own it. The man whose obsession had driven her from safety into uncertainty. The man who looked at her and saw his dead sister, a ghost he could finally rescue. But she had something he didn't expect. She had Teresa, the real Grace, alive and ready to shatter his carefully constructed delusion. This confrontation would either free them all or ignite something far more dangerous than anything that had come before. The coffee shop was crowded with the Sunday afternoon rush. Families, students, couples lingering over lattes. Amara had chosen it specifically for the noise and witnesses. Safety in numbers. Teresa sat beside her at a corner table, her posture rigid with tension. Malcolm arrived exactly on time. He looked terrible, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, his eyes shadowed with sleeplessness, his suit wrinkled. When he saw Teresa, he stopped dead in the doorway. "Grace." The word came out as a whisper, barely audible over the coffee shop din. "Hello, Malcolm." Teresa's voice was steady, but Amara could see her hands trembling in her lap. "It's Teresa now. Has been for 14 years. He moved toward them like a man in a dream, his eyes never leaving his sister's face. "You're alive. You're alive. All this time I thought. You thought I died because it was easier than facing what you did." Teresa's voice cut through his shock like a blade. "Sit down. We need to talk." Malcolm sank into the chair across from them. He looked between Teresa and Amara, his expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been relief or might have been horror. "I don't understand," he said. "The police said they found you. In your car. You and the baby." "The police never said that. You assumed it. You heard that a woman and baby died in a car on Christmas Eve, and you convinced yourself it was me. You needed it to be me because if I was dead, you didn't have to face the fact that I was alive and you'd turn me away." Malcolm's face crumpled. "No. No, that's not. I looked for you. After that Christmas, I went to the hospital, the shelters, everywhere. No one knew where you were. Because I'd changed my name by then. I was Grace Rivers when I was desperate and alone. I became Teresa Richards when a kind woman saved my life, the life you should have saved." Teresa leaned forward. "I've been in Dallas this whole time, Malcolm. Building a life. Raising my daughter. Watching from a distance as you turned my story into your redemption narrative. Your daughter. She's alive too." Malcolm's voice broke. "I have a niece." "How old is she?" 14. "Her name is Zara. And no, you don't get to meet her. You don't get to suddenly decide you want to be family after abandoning us when we needed you most." "I didn't abandon you. I told you to be patient, to wait for the right time. You told me to wait because my need for help was inconvenient." Teresa's voice rose, and several people nearby turned to look. She lowered it again, but the fury remained. "I was sleeping in my car in December. I was 7 months pregnant with no money, no food, no hope. And you told me to wait because you were busy building your empire. I was going to help you. I just needed time to. I didn't have time. And you knew that. You knew I was desperate, and you chose yourself anyway." Teresa's eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. "So I'm going to tell you something now that I should have told you 15 years ago. I don't forgive you. I don't absolve you. And I don't owe you the fantasy of redemption you've been chasing through other people's lives." Malcolm turned to Amara, his expression pleading. "Is that what you think? That I was using you?" "I think you were trying to rewrite history," Amara said quietly. "And I understand why. But Malcolm, I'm not your sister. Helping me doesn't change what happened with Grace, with Teresa. And staying in that apartment, accepting your control, wouldn't have healed your guilt. It would have just transferred it. I wasn't trying to control you. I was trying to keep you safe. You entered my apartment at midnight. You showed up at my workplace unannounced. You threatened my job when I left. You sent me legal threats for made-up debts." Amara's voice remained calm, but firm. "That's not keeping someone safe. That's keeping them trapped. I only did those things because I was afraid you'd make the same mistakes Teresa made. That you'd end up alone and hurt because I didn't try hard enough to protect you. The only mistake I made was trusting you to let me stand on my own feet," Amara said. "You helped me when I needed it, and I'm grateful for that. But Malcolm, your help came with strings I didn't know about. You weren't saving me. You were saving yourself. So what do you want from me?" Malcolm's voice was desperate now. "An apology? Money? I'll give you whatever you need. Just don't disappear. Please. Let me be part of your life, part of the kids' lives." "No. The word came from both women simultaneously. Teresa continued. What we want is for you to get real help. Professional help. The kind that addresses why you need to control people's lives to feel worthy. And we want you to leave Amara alone. Completely. No more calls, no more showing up, no more using your money or influence to manipulate her situation. And the lawsuit? Malcolm looked at Amara. The demand for $4,500? You drop it. Today. You have your lawyer send documentation that the debt is forgiven and there's no obligation. Amara pulled out a piece of paper she'd prepared with Teresa's help. And you sign this agreement stating you won't contact me, visit my workplace, or interfere with my employment. If you violate it, we file for a restraining order with all the documentation we've already collected. Malcolm took the paper with shaking hands. He read it slowly, his expression crumbling with each line. You're asking me to pretend you don't exist. I'm asking you to let me build my life without your shadow over it, Amara said. The way you should have let Teresa build hers. For a long moment, Malcolm said nothing. Then he pulled out a pen and signed the paper. His signature was shaky, barely legible. I'm sorry, he whispered, looking at Teresa. For all of it. For failing you. For turning your pain into my story. For everything. I know you are, Teresa said. But being sorry isn't enough. You need to do better. Be better. Not for me, not for Amara, but for yourself. Because, Malcolm, this obsession is destroying you. And if you don't deal with it, you're going to hurt someone, or yourself, beyond repair. Malcolm stood on unsteady legs. He looked at both women with an expression of such profound loss that Amara almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I want you to know, he said quietly, that helping you, Amara, it did mean something. Watching you get that job, seeing your kids happy and safe, it wasn't all delusion. Some of it was real. Some of it mattered. I know, Amara said. And that's the tragedy. You have real kindness in you, Malcolm. Real generosity. But you've wrapped it in so much pain and control that it becomes toxic. You could help people genuinely if you learn to let them go when they're ready. He nodded slowly, then turned to Teresa. Does Zara know about me? She knows I have a brother who isn't in my life. That's all she needs to know. Could I? One day, maybe, when I've gotten help, could I? No. Teresa's voice was final. You lost that right when you chose your pride over your family. My daughter has a good life. I won't let your issues contaminate it. Malcolm absorbed this like a physical blow. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the coffee shop. Through the window, they watched him get into his Mercedes. He sat there for several minutes, his head bowed over the steering wheel. Then he drove away. Amara released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Is it over? Is it really over? For now, Teresa said. But we stay vigilant. We keep the documentation. We watch for any signs he's violating the agreement. She reached over and squeezed Amara's hand. But yes, I think the worst is over. You stood up to him. You took your power back. That's more than I did at your age. Over the next few weeks, life slowly normalized. Malcolm kept his word. No more calls, no more surprise visits, no more attempts at contact. His lawyer sent formal documentation dropping the lawsuit and confirming Amara had no financial obligations to the Rivers Foundation. Director Hughes reported that Malcolm had actually increased his donation to Little Scholars, but with the stipulation that he have no involvement in personnel decisions or contact with specific families. It was as close to an apology as he could manage, supporting the work while removing himself from the equation. Amara found an apartment in a complex near the preschool. It was small, the neighborhood wasn't fancy, but it was hers. Earned with her own money from her own job. No strings, no benefactors, no ghosts haunting the walls. Teresa helped them move in, along with Zara, who'd bonded with Jasmine and DeAndre over the past few weeks. As they unpacked boxes, Zara asked her mother the question that had been building. Mom, was that man at the coffee shop Uncle Malcolm? Teresa looked at her daughter for a long moment. Yes. Why doesn't he see us? Why isn't he part of our family? Because sometimes, baby, people make choices that break relationships beyond repair. Your uncle chose himself when I needed him to choose family. And I chose to build a life without him rather than wait for him to become the person he should have been. Do you think he'll ever become that person? Teresa glanced at Amara, who was showing Jasmine her new bedroom. Maybe. People can change if they really want to. But we can't wait around hoping for it. We have to live our lives. 3 months later, on a crisp October morning, Amara gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Hope, not subtle, but honest. Hope for the future she was building. Hope that her children would grow up safe and loved. Hope that the darkness they'd walked through had led to light. Teresa was in the delivery room, having become more than just a former benefactor or Malcolm's estranged sister. She'd become family, the chosen kind, built on mutual support rather than blood obligation. When the nurse placed Hope in Amara's arms, Jasmine and DeAndre crowded around to see their baby sister. Their faces glowed with wonder and excitement. They looked healthy, happy, secure. Nothing like the frightened children who'd collected cans on a highway 6 months ago. "You did it," Teresa whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You survived and you thrived. You're exactly who I needed to see when I was at my lowest, proof that we don't have to stay victims of our circumstances." Amara looked down at her newborn daughter, then at her other children, then around the hospital room at the life she'd built from nothing. "We did it," she corrected. "You saved yourself. I saved myself. And we helped each other. That's how it's supposed to work." Later, when the children had gone home with Teresa and Zara, Amara sat alone with baby Hope and let herself cry. For everything she'd lost. For everything she'd survived. For the terror of those months living in her car. For the complicated gift of Malcolm's help and the price it had almost cost. For the sister bond she'd found with Teresa. For the future that was finally, genuinely hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the baby. I heard she's beautiful. I hope you're all well." Amara deleted it without responding. Malcolm would always be out there somewhere, carrying his guilt and his obsession. But he was no longer her problem to solve. She'd drawn her boundaries, built her life, and moved forward. That was the real victory, not the apartment or the job or the escape. The victory was learning that she was strong enough to save herself, wise enough to accept help when it was genuine, and brave enough to walk away when help became a prison. As Hope nursed contentedly, Amara thought about the pregnant woman who'd collected cans on the highway 6 months ago. That woman had been desperate, terrified, convinced she was worthless because she'd been discarded by the man who'd promised to love her. But she'd been wrong. She'd never been worthless. She'd been tired, traumatized, and temporarily without resources. But she'd always had value, always had strength, always had the capacity to rise. And now, holding her newborn daughter in a hospital room paid for by insurance from her own employment, Amara finally believed it. She was enough. She'd always been enough. She just needed the chance to prove it, to herself most of all. The millionaire who'd stopped on the road that day had saved her life. But in the end, Amara had saved herself. And that made all the difference. Months turned into years. Jasmine excelled in school. DeAndre discovered a love for art. Hope grew into a bright, curious toddler. Amara advanced to lead teacher at Little Scholars, eventually becoming assistant director. She bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood. She built a life. And sometimes, late at night when the children were sleeping, she'd think about Malcolm. She'd wonder if he'd gotten the help he needed. If he'd learned to separate his guilt from his generosity. If he'd found peace or if he was still patrolling highways looking for second chances. She hoped he'd healed. Not for her sake, but for his. Because despite everything, she understood his pain. She understood the desperate need to rewrite endings, to make right what had gone wrong. She'd felt it herself every time she'd looked at her children during those dark months and promised them that things would get better. The difference was, she'd learned to move forward instead of staying trapped in the past. And that had made all the difference. Teresa threw a party for Hope's first birthday, inviting all the families they'd both helped over the years through their respective foundations. Because in the end, Teresa had created something beautiful from her pain, a non-profit that genuinely helped people without strings, without control, without obsession. She'd become the support system she'd needed when she was desperate. And Amara had become the example she'd needed to see. Proof that a woman could be broken down to nothing and still rebuild herself stronger than before. As they sang Happy Birthday and Hope demolished her smash cake with enthusiastic glee, Amara caught Teresa's eye across the room. No words were needed. They both knew what they'd survived. They both knew what they'd overcome. They both knew that the real miracle wasn't the help they'd received, but the strength they'd found within themselves. That night, after everyone had left and the children were asleep, Amara wrote a letter. Not to Malcolm, but to herself. To the desperate woman collecting cans on Highway 87. To the mother who'd thought she was failing her children. To the woman who'd almost let someone else's obsession define her worth. "You are stronger than you know," she wrote. "You will survive this. You will build something beautiful from the ashes. And one day, you'll hold your baby girl in your arms and realize that every terrible moment was worth it because it led you here. To solid ground. To safety. To home. Keep going. You're almost there." She folded the letter and tucked it away in her desk drawer. Maybe one day, when one of her children faced their own darkness, she'd share it with them. She'd tell them the story of the pregnant woman who collected cans on the road, who accepted help from a millionaire who stopped to save her, and who learned that the only person who could truly save her was herself. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was no prince, no perfect rescue, no happily ever after without scars. But it was real. It was honest. And it was hers. And that was more than enough. Remember to subscribe to support our channel. Thanks.